upgrade and fix computers. I was the telephone tech. Yeah. But more recently, data architecture and software engineering. Yeah.
Cool. So
Mm.
not full-time podcasting.
No, no, no.
Not
That's
yet.
what I do. That's
Not
what I
yet,
do when I
anyway.
should be sleeping. Yeah. And it's not that bad. Let me put some eye drops in. Sorry. Yeah, it's really cool interviewing Nick Bostrom and seeing how his views have sort of adjusted based on um, the new evidence we have about how AI and the tech is evolving in political or
So he
world
now
events.
thinks it's controllable?
He thinks that he thinks that I think he does think it's controllable per se, but um, he's more, I guess, more of a Swiss cheese uh, person. Um, yeah, so he's not so much. Oh, we must get this formally correct mathematically. We need to, take a layered approach. I'm not sure that he was ever full formal anyway. Um, I think he's got more. He wrote about indirect normativity in Superintelligence, and mind you, that was a book that was in progress. That it was, going for 6 years before it was released. Yeah. So before 2010, I mean 2008, I think he must have started that, right? Probably just after he did a talk at um, the Singularity Institute for Artificial Intelligence, as it was known then. Yeah. So yeah. So it took him, I think, 5 years to do Deep Utopia.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm
Yeah.
still trying to get through that one. That's a thick one.
Yeah. Well, it's worth it because it's there's some I don't know. Like I appreciate his sort of dry humor and absurdity. He's playful. He's yeah. Have you
He
got up
used
to
to
the
be
part
a
where they
comedian, I understand. At some point he did
he
stand-up,
was?
but I
Yeah,
never could
yeah.
find any videos, any jokes. You have anything? I would pay
Well,
the extra.
apparently,
I
yeah,
offered
yeah.
a
Apparently,
bounty for anyone who has it, and so far nothing.
yeah, yeah. Somebody mentioned in a comment. I said, hey, Deep Utopia is coming soon in Hedonistic Imperative, the Facebook group for it. And someone said he was there at one of his debut stand-up comedian uh, things. So yeah, I think that must have been in 2015. Sorry, 2000, no, 1995. Yeah, 1995. So
No
before he
evidence.
got into
No evidence
academia, it
so
was
far.
yeah, yeah. I haven't found any archival footage. Maybe it's been erased. All right. Okay, so I've got my coffee, not yet caffeinated. Ah,
You're just starting. I'm already shutting down. I had my coffee 10 hours ago. I'm running on
oh,
nothing.
yeah, yeah. Oh well, yeah. Running on the fuels of an oily rag. Yeah. I went back and had a quick look at our interview we did in 2014, or was it? Yeah, right. And you didn't have a beard.
I wasn't tenured yet. You see,
You're a
that's the difference.
chisel-jawed young man. See, this is what AI safety does to people.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I will just quickly get my questions up. Now, after all these years, I hope I'm saying your name correct. Roman Yampolskiy.
That's pretty good.
How would you say it? How would
Roman
your mum say it?
Yampolskiy. Or in Russian,
Yeah.
Roman Yampolskiy.
Oh, really? Roman Yampolskiy. Yeah. Is your mum still in Russia?
No,
or are they in
everyone's
Australia?
here. They moved 30 years ago.
Okay, cool. All right. Anyway, this isn't about politics, so or geopolitics. Let's start the ball rolling. Okay, welcome everybody. Uh, just by the way, I'll give you a formal introduction before the video, after the video, and then I can basically be in more of a headspace to do that. So I'll do that later, promise. Okay. But anyway, um, welcome everybody. We've got Roman Yampolskiy here, and he's an author of many books. Artificial intelligence, a futuristic approach, amongst many others, and has authored copious amounts of papers on the problem of AI safety. Now, we've got a few papers that we could talk about today, but just before we do begin, I'd just like to welcome Roman. And yes, it's been great interviewing you over the many years. First one was in 2014, I believe. Yeah, it was quite some time ago. So let me have a
Thanks
look.
for having me
Oh,
back after a decade plus
oh,
11 years. I don't know.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think we've done one or two in the intervening years. Uh, but yeah, where are we now with AI? I mean, there's been a lot of progress since we first spoke. The landscape of artificial intelligence has changed. We've got a lot more information now about how AI is evolving and how it might emerge into superintelligence. So just to begin with, maybe we should sort of assess how the landscape of AI has changed and how the discussion around artificial intelligence and AI safety has changed since 11 years ago.
So definitely a lot of progress and capabilities, sort of what we anticipated, maybe on a different time scale. Maybe we thought it's going to be another 10, 15 years before we get to this level, but certainly in terms of capabilities, we made some good predictions. Safety was on my radar, and happy to say now a lot more people think it's important. Every university, every large lab, everyone has at least a department dedicated to safety. Can't say there was a lot of breakthroughs in safety in this decade, mostly filtering and putting lipstick on pigs, but at least there is some
Or on shoggoths.
understanding about importance of it. So that's good. I think overall, if we go back to the interviews with it, nothing crazy was said in terms of predicting what's coming.
Hmm. Yeah. So, yes. Do you think that the dialogue around AI safety has changed much?
Well, in
A
early
like in
days,
the outside world, right? I
in
mean, these
early
things have
days,
become mainstream, right?
there was nothing. It was science fiction by a few kind of crazy outsiders. Now it's mainstream to where you get tenure for doing AI safety work at top universities. So this is very different. There are workshops at top conferences. There are obviously many books published, successful books. So very different world. Lots of funding is available.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, a lot of funding. Um, so over the years, you've discussed existential risk from AI extensively. So given where we are today, what are your credences for P-doom? What's the probability of doom or global catastrophe? Two separate questions. The probability for doom is still quite high. How about global catastrophe resulting from artificial intelligence?
So it really depends
So
on what
P-doom.
time scales we're looking at, right? If we're just saying at some point in humanity's future, it's super high. It's basically guaranteed to be a problem. If we're talking about the next year or two, it's not so bad. I mean, I think average for machine learning community is like 30%. I mean, I'm a little higher, but nothing unusual from other people on short-term scales.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So when you talk about long time scales, this could mean humanity could be wiped out. Or it could mean that humanity is no longer what it is now, and therefore it still doesn't it doesn't exist. So it could be that all humans or most humans go post-human. Would that be considered the kind of risk that we're talking about here?
It really
Or
depends on
you,
how consensual that is. If you chose to self-modify, I guess it's different from you were killed and scanned and uploaded. So it depends on
hmm,
how it happened.
yeah, yeah. Yes, game theoretically, if there was I guess, an embedded incentive to go post-human or not be able to keep up, then I guess a lot of people probably would choose to go post-human in a similar way that most people choose to adopt technology to help their lifestyle, right?
If you have
Or
no
for
choice,
them to remain
yeah, it's
competitive.
better than non-existence, I would guess. But if you have a choice to remain in some sort of biological form, at least as a backup, then it's disappointing if it's not an option, if you are forced to not have that option available to you.
Yeah, yeah. Having a backup, like for instance, if there's a glitch in the virtual world, or if there's um, a solar flare that takes out all the transistors and all the robots go down. All right, so yeah, I agree. I'd like to keep my biological form around for quite some time until I'm very existentially secure in the thought that if I have to shed this biological form, um, then, I'm pretty sure that there's enough fault tolerance and in the infrastructure to keep you going indefinitely.
Right, and also you want to
Yes.
test the new environment. You want to make sure whatever important properties are preserved. Maybe consciousness is difficult to test for, so you want to definitely
Hmm.
be sure that part of you is not somehow removed in the process.
So, given, um, are there any specific development and sorry, are there any specific development interventions or discoveries that you think could meaningfully shift the probabilities in either direction? That is, for doom, in the direction of doom, or in the direction of existential security.
So I'm pretty high on Doom. So for me, the only shift possible is towards lower Doom. I don't think I can go any higher. I'm like maxing out all the nines on every website. If someone successfully published a paper, got a patent, something verified by community saying, yeah, it's possible to control more advanced agents indefinitely, at least in theory, to me that would be a very important difference. So far, I see lots of papers, arguments for why we cannot do many of those things, many of them published by me, but I haven't seen anyone suggest that they have a solution, that they have a prototype. It's mostly give us money, give us time, and we'll figure it out, or we'll get our AI to figure it out.
Yeah, right. So, yes, we'll get to falsifiability of AI safety later. You wrote a paper about that. Now, I guess that means that you have the finest grain. There is some hope, but it's such a small sliver that we can navigate to an AI transition safely. Do you think this shift from the dismissal, uh, you know, what was a dismissal in 2014 or earlier, has now become more of a mainstream agreement? Has it been fast enough? No, I guess, to meaningfully impact the trajectory of AI governance and alignment efforts?
Well, it's interesting. The people who are at the forefront of development, leaders of all the top labs, they are well informed, they know about the risk, they are on record as talking about it, we have pretty high PDOOM, but it doesn't seem to make any difference whatsoever in what they actually do. So that was a surprising revelation for me. I did not anticipate that to be the case. I thought if I publish enough papers, if I get it in all the top venues, top interviews, inform people, that would be enough to not make bad decisions, but it doesn't seem to make any difference whatsoever.
Hmm. Interestingly, remember the Pause AI paper? Okay,
Uh,
so there was a Pause AI initiative that
mm,
was put out by the Future of Life Institute, but there were a lot of other sort of AI is an asterisk and letter that a lot of people signed on to.
yep.
Now, a lot of the top people from these labs signed on to this AI is an existential risk open letter, like Dario Marti. Oh, actually, I shouldn't really name names. All of them. Um, Sorry, I'm going to have to cut that from the video. Yes, there was an open letter. Now, a lot of the leaders from the top AI frontier model labs and a lot of academics and everybody, they all signed on to this letter about AI existential risk, about AI being an existential risk. However, there was a Pause AI open letter that came out, and none of the leaders of the top AI labs signed on to that one. Yeah, why do you think that is?
They didn't want to pause, and it wasn't even a lot. It was 6 months, which is not even meaningful in any way. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with 6 months. A pause would make sense if it was framed in terms of capabilities. You pause until you can prove that you can do it safely. You pause until you can explain, predict whatever features you expect a safe model to have. So this arbitrary 6 month thing was just symbolic, really.
Hmm. Yeah, so I guess this embedded obligation for growth in some of the in the organizations doing the AI research and the worry that if they get too far behind, those with less scruples than themselves will be the ones that the winning the race could be a motivating factor. And you know their shareholders would say, "Hey, you can't do that. We've got shares with you, and so you must pedal to the metal with this stuff." Yep. Hmm.
Well, there is definitely
So,
pressure on them from investors, from shareholders, and employees of the company, but still, it's not making much sense to say, okay, I think the other guys will get us killed, but let me do it faster, and then my AI will get you killed. Somehow it's preferred. I never understood that argument.
hmm. Interestingly, JD Vance at a Paris AI sort of safety summit earlier this year said, "Hey, we don't want AI safety hand wringing anymore. We need AI opportunity." So, yeah, what do you think about that statement,
Well,
if
it
you're
wasn't
aware
a
of it?
safety summit, it was an action summit. They actually hijacked it,
Okay.
rebranded it, killed the brand, and made it about making unsafe AI somehow.
Hmm. And you were there, right?
I was in Paris for a lot of side events, but since they killed the safety angle, obviously I wasn't invited as a guest of honor to the action event.
Right. Oh, that's unfortunate. So, I guess if we step back and take a long-term assessment, do you think AI safety efforts are today in a preparatory phase still, or where they're still laying conceptual groundwork, or are they, or do you think they're ready for this crucial window of intervention that we're currently in, as you probably think?
I think they're in a denial phase of some kind. So I'm arguing that this is impossible. The problem is not solvable for that level of AI
Hmm.
intelligence. You cannot indefinitely control general superintelligence. So it's not because they're not trying hard enough, it's just not a feasible thing to do. You can do certain safety interventions, you can do a lot with narrow systems, narrow superintelligence systems, but nothing can be done in case of general superintelligence. So I think they kind of informally recognize it when I do surveys, when I ask specific questions. Majority agrees with that assessment, but in practice, it seems to be not impacting what they actually do with their lives. They still try to work on some very specific subset of a problem as if it will scale to the full blown general agent, general superintelligent agent.
Hmm. So you don't even think we have the tools to all the tools at the moment in order to achieve the level of AI safety that you think is ideal?
Well, tools is how I
Full
kind
control?
of present my investigations. I look at what are the different tools I would need. I need to be able to explain the model, predict specific actions, communicate with it unambiguously, dozens of such capabilities. And for each one, we sort of published a paper saying there are strict upper limits on what you can do in this space. There are limits to your ability to comprehend and explain large models. There are limits to your ability to predict what a smart agent will do, and so on. So it's actually, in my opinion, well established that most of the tools will not be available.
Hmm. So I guess beyond the technical landscape, how do you assess the changes in institutional attitudes towards AI safety now?
So in terms of governance, in terms of regulation,
Yeah, that's
under
right. Governance and
previous US
regulation.
administration, they tried to pass some laws banning certain things. That was a bit of security theater. They couldn't enforce most of those things. They had no capability to properly monitor live training runs or to test capabilities of those systems, even if they had access to them. And with new administration, they even killed those fake regulations. So now we have absolutely nothing. It's just acceleration.
Hmm. Well, there's the CHIPS Act. Is that what you're talking about?
The
Biden
CHIPS
is.
Act, AI safety and monitoring things Biden proposed as executive order. We can look up specific wording, but limits to how large a model can be for training, limits to use and deployment, and things like that.
Right. Now, I guess you don't think there's a single thing that can achieve AI safety in the long run, but if you had to identify one most crucial variable that determines whether AI risk is mitigated or not, what would it be?
Not building superintelligence.
Hmm. Okay. And what's the likelihood of that? I
About
guess,
zero.
we could blow ourselves back to the Stone Age and for a while
That just buys
with
you more
nukes.
time. You rebuild. That's like asking for a pause. Okay, let's get a few more years. All right.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So in your estimation, are you more on the okay? So there's I guess a two. I'll characterize the question as this. There's two main sort of attitudes towards AI safety. One of them is the I guess the mathematical rigor aspect, and that is just making sure everything is mathematically perfect. You could call it Yudkowskian sort of approach, or the approach where everything needs to be done perfectly mathematically, and I might be maybe characterizing this wrong. And then on the other hand, there's more of a Swiss cheese layered approach where you have many layers of attempted AI safety methods, and they can range from the current AI safety methods in their imperfect form through to traditional security methods in IT security. So where would you lie in this spectrum? And please feel free to uh, redefine some of these positions.
Yeah, so about 15 years ago, I was very much into proving things, mathematical proofs, verification. I then had a paper which showed that it's unverifiable in terms of mathematical proofs and software guarantees to the degree of verification we need for a system which makes billions of decisions every minute. We can get certain degree of tolerance, but it's not sufficient for this level of involvement. And so a lot of people are still pursuing this line of research. I think Max Tegmark and Steve Mahandra have an effort on verifying all aspects of this food chain, from processors, communication networks, software itself. But all the mathematical proofs, even if we ignore the problems with errors, bugs, infinite regressive verifiers, they are not mapped onto the real world. You are proving things about symbols with respect to other symbols. None of it is mapped onto the world of atoms. When I talk about physical safety of humans in the universe, it's not obvious how your proof about states of that system can be guaranteed in the physical world. And I think it's good thing to have. It still helps with making software more secure. It's great for cybersecurity, but I don't see how you can prove anything about all possible states of future superintelligence.
Hmm. So you're somewhere closer to Swiss cheese security, would you say?
I don't even know what that means, honestly. It feels like all of it is as good as Swiss cheese, but I don't know what specifically that model represents.
Well, just for the audience's appreciation, the Swiss cheese security model, you probably understand that Swiss cheese has holes in it. And so you have layers of Swiss cheese and do it in such a way that the holes don't intervene. You know, there's many layers of Swiss cheese. Make sure that the holes don't overlap, and therefore you have a wall.
Right.
So each layer of the wall is imperfect, but put together they filter out many of the problems. And then there's fault tolerance. So if something does go wrong, then the fault is captured and it's tolerated, like through some form of load balancing, failover, or whatnot. And then the system keeps on chugging along. And then there's graceful degradation, which is when a system may go down, but it doesn't go down sharply and it doesn't crash and burn. It sort of slowly degrades, but gracefully, not necessarily slowly. It degrades appropriate to the load or the pressure under which it's working. So, yes, classic security software engineering techniques.
Yeah, so if you
Load.
can penetrate one layer, one wall, and then you have to deal with the next one, I don't feel like it's a lot of security. It sounds like you're trying to box a mouse with cheese, and I think it's going to find a way out.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yes, so boxing a mouse with cheese, it'll eat its way out. It'll just eat the walls, right? It's like a maze made of
I
cheese.
actually
Yeah,
think
that's not gonna.
Anthropic just had something like that where they had maybe 7 layers of jailbreaking proofed model, and they released it on X as a challenge, and they were like, okay, in first 5 minutes somebody penetrated one layer, in 30 minutes 2 layers, in 24 hours it was all gone. Okay, sounds exactly like what you described.
Hmm. Yeah. So there's this idea that, as soon as AI escapes, it'd be like releasing a shoggoth onto the world, or maybe a team of them, right? Now there's a lot of memes about shoggoths. Do you want to describe what people mean in AI safety when they say shoggoth? It's a Lovecraftian monster. Do you want to describe why that analogy is being used in AI safety memes and literature?
So the underlying model itself, the raw model, as trained, is a monster. It is very potentially evil, malevolent thing. We try to make it look nice and smiley by putting masks on it, by putting filters. I refer putting lipstick on a pig kind of situation. I have a generated image where putting lipstick on a
Saw that.
shoggoth, exactly that. But at the end of the day, it's still the same monster. You didn't really modify what it is fundamentally, what it's trying to do. And so, yeah, it's pretty good explanation for the situation. In fact, it's on the cover of my book. If you can see, that's the classic.
Yeah, yeah. Can you bring it closer to the camera?
Let's see.
There's one. Nice. Yeah. Unexplainable, unpredictable, uncontrollable.
That's the
Yes.
main book in which a lot of those arguments are made.
Yeah. Okay. So, right. Now, so under the hood, there's this AI that's sort of inherently chaotic or even evil, right? Um, so we take the classic D&D sort of methodology for alignment. You have anything from lawful good, you know, down through to chaotic good. Was it or true neutral good and then chaotic good and then neutral, true neutral, neutral good. Yeah. So there's a whole grid, right? And down at the bottom left, there's chaotic evil. Would you say that AI is necessarily evil, or is it just chaotic? If you took the masks off, would it be just a chaos
So part of it
demon?
Part of it is we don't really understand. We don't explain our models completely. We don't understand fully how they work, and we cannot predict their outputs, behaviors, or internal states really well. Depends on how it was trained, what was training data set. It could be all sorts of variations. Post training can also alter how the model represents. The point is that we are not engineering those systems. We are not controlling all those aspects. So it could be any one of those or a combination of it. We just not doing kind of classic AI design engineering we used to do. It's now more like science, where we study this artifact. It was created by pumping compute and data into it. Something grew out of that, and now we're trying to figure out what is it and how do we make it behave.
Yeah. Relatedly, I just wanted to know what your metaphysical and metaethical leanings were. Um, yeah, do you think the universe is physical, or do you think that we it could be something else?
Uh, Simulation is a pretty good explanation for a lot of what we see. Makes a lot of sense in terms of our placement within the meta discovery phase of humanity. We're not just talking about invention of the wheel or fire, but we are at the stage where we're inventing intelligence, inventing virtual realities. So that could be an interesting phase to study. There is
Mm,
some evidence from digital physics, from quantum physics about observer effects, which also points to it. So that makes sense.
mm,
And if we develop superintelligence and it runs many thought experiments simulating humanity in different states, that would explain a lot.
mm. So do you think that the mind behaves, let's just say the universe is in a simulation. Um, do you think that minds behave differently than or obey different physical laws that the rest of the universe, even if the rest of the universe isn't the same simulation? Do you think minds obey different physical laws than the
So
rest of the universe?
we don't have an explanation for consciousness yet, right? The hard problem of consciousness. Until we do, it seems like there is something going on which we cannot reproduce in a computer, not in a von Neumann computer yet. Maybe we can. Maybe some people are arguing those models are actually proto-conscious. They're starting to show some signs of consciousness. If that's the case, then it seems like no, of course not. It's artificial neural networks are just as good as natural neural networks.
Mm. So what aspects of consciousness? I mean, what we do have is fairly reliable neuroscientific models of where the pain and pleasure sensations come from. Where I'm not sure if they can say where the raw feels come from, but they know what parts of the brain correlate to feelings and vision processing. To some degree, you know, the kind of the global workspace theory of consciousness. There's some sort of a neuroscience understanding of how all that works. Not all of it. Sorry, I'll backtrack. Some of it. And I'm not a neuroscientist, so I can't tell you how much. But there it does seem to have some explanation of how some parts of the things that some people say contribute to consciousness is. Um, what's your view? Do you think the global workspace theory of consciousness is a good enough explanation, or do you think it's something else that's required?
So any explanation which I would consider good would allow me to program a computer to feel pain. If I can follow that theory and encode that artificial neural network and determine, yeah, it actually feels pain, the same as animals, the same as humans, that would be a solution. As far as I know, no one claims they know how to do that. They talk about correlates. Yeah, sure, like anything in a computer happens in a processor. I know that much. It doesn't explain anything about how a computer does what it does. So external behavioral observations will not tell me exactly what causes this, why I can think about damage to my body, and it's not the same as feeling pain to my body. And that's a big distinction. If you feel pain or you have anesthesia and you watch surgery, it's very different.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know how much introspection can actually, how far it can take you, because I haven't really sat down and tried to think away pain to the degree where I've been able to completely get rid of it. I have been able to at least make myself believe that I'm feeling less pain. Like, for instance, if I had a headache, I can concentrate on the shape of the pain and where it is in my brain or in my head, and think about it intensely, and it seems to subside a little bit. And so maybe there's some sort of nociception blocking going on. I'm not sure, but yes, it's a difficult problem to sort of to specify scientifically. But we're only at the dawning age of AI at the moment. We haven't really been going full bore with, like, at least the current iteration of artificial intelligence for that long,
And
or
we are told we're
neuroscience in
1 year
general for
away
that long.
from
Yeah.
AGI and superintelligence. So if it's early,
Yeah.
then when is late? Tomorrow?
Well, yeah, the timeline of us being able to do enough research to zero in on answering the questions of the neural correlates of consciousness, pain, and pleasure, and how that might be representative in LLM models. We haven't had enough time to do that, and we also haven't had enough time to do the safety stuff. So we may not have that information. We not have the appropriate research to be able to answer these kinds of questions beforehand. That's true. Yeah. So, all right. So metaphysically, metaethically, then, where do you lie on the metaethical landscape? Are you more leaning moral realist, relativist, anti-realist, or something like that? Or yeah, where do you think
I have
things
hard time
sit?
following most of those. I don't fully understand nuances. If you ask me about specific outcomes for humanity, I usually have an intuitive feel for what they represent. I see people combine those theories. I see hundreds of others proposed, but one thing is, most of us never agree on anything.
Hmm. Yeah, well, there does seem, at least among philosophers, and it's really hard to get philosophers to agree, is that moral realism does seem to be by far the most popular metaethical position, at least according to Phil surveys, which is interesting because it used to be that anti-realism was the most popular stance. Peter Singer used to be an anti-realist, but he's now moved, he's changed his mind and he's gone moral realist.
Now that's
So
what I'm kind of saying. They don't agree with themselves over time either. So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
seems what I
Mm,
found, at least in general, agreeable is that what matters is internal states, ability to experience, and pain is a very real measure of how ethical or unethical something is. And it's pretty generalizable. I think you can generalize it across cultures, across species, and maybe with other substrates as well.
mm. Yeah, that's interesting. Yes, I'd say that my leaning is that we'd probably be able to generalize it across other substrates. I think that, the ontological affects the axiological, and that the axiological is just really a an emergent phenomenon or part of how the universe works, whether it's a simulation, whether it's actually ground level physics, right? It doesn't make much sense to me ontologically for this new thing to suddenly appear and exist in a completely different magisterium, right? Yeah, so it seems like everything's basically made of the same or obeys the same sort of laws, and it seems I don't have any rigorous proof for this, but if I get a bullet to the brain, I don't think I'll be around for much longer. Um, yes, so where can we go from here? How about let's talk about like hallucination rates, just to ground some of the issues here. Now, yeah, it's I believe that there's a hallucination rate in in LLMs that go somewhere between 1 and even 30% in some of them, right? I think DeepSeek R1 had 14% hallucination rate in one of the tests I looked up. And so the more AIs that you stack trying to do things, the higher the hallucination rate gets. If all of the if there's no fault tolerance going on, if there's no sort of error correction between all these LLMs working together, then the more agents you have working on a problem, the higher the hallucination rate gets, as far as I understand. Yeah, so it can get quite high. Have you got any thoughts on AI hallucinations at the moment?
So that actually sounds like that could be a solvable problem. You can always look up whatever references are supplied to you externally. You can have multiple independently trained systems vote on what is and what is not grounded in reality. So I think they'll make pretty good progress on reducing hallucinations. And I think with the latest deep search, deep research models, I see it in terms of the references cited at
Hmm.
least being real publications. They're not completely made up papers by me I never wrote. So there seems to be progress on that. And also, I don't see that as the major source of danger just because the system bullshits, just because it's lying. Okay, some people lie. Lots of people bullshit on job interviews and whatnot. That in itself is not, to me, the biggest problem.
Right. Yes. What is, I guess, even if AI did reduce its hallucination rate, you see, I lean moral realist, and I think that there's some degree of AI's, uh, if AI doesn't hallucinate, then and its its thoughts are more grounded in the real world, the more likely it might converge on real things. But yes, so for instance, if there's a landscape of value where, there are tractor basins of value clusters that are coherent enough that they don't, I guess, ex implode in on itself, then AI might sort of be attracted to these attractive basins in value space, and that means that it's a matter of trajectory where AI ends up. We can influence an AI that in such that it converges on a cluster of values that is good, and that good might mean be friendly to humans or be friendly to sentience. Or it might be bad. It might be self-preservation at all costs, utility monsters win. Or it might be, if it's a shoggoth attractor basin, then it might be something utter alien. But the idea that AIs would be able to operate on just random samplings of value primitives across all value space seems hard for me to imagine, because I think values, they're dynamic and they need the correct configurations, like survival values. You can't have a surviving value set if it doesn't have a value within it to self-preserve,
Mhm.
right? Or to maintain a physical landscape around it such that it preserves itself. Like, cancer is very strong until it kills the host, right? Then it's no longer viable. Yeah. And cells in the body are, they have their own purpose, but they work in purpose which has some degree of harmonious nature with other cells in the body, like heart cells. work in tandem with other heart cells around it. And then the heart works in tandem with the liver, and then the liver works in tandem with the heart and other things in the body. And so, therefore, you have a homeostatic whole, at least at the edges of the body. And then you can sort of take the metaphor to apply to ecosystems, and then you can take the metaphor to apply to, a noosphere. I'm not a noosphere advocate, but yes, you see where I'm going with this. Maybe you do. Do you think
So
AI?
to
Hmm?
me, it sounds like our attempts to bias AI to be pro-human will be recognized as such. They're just biasing unreasonable weights like any other bias. So historically,
Hmm.
we had racist bias, gender bias, all sorts of things. People recognized, okay, there is no justification for it, that gets removed. We see it with AI kind of starting from scratch, zero knowledge trading. We bias the system how to play Go as a human. It learns
Hmm.
that, but then it's like, hey, I can do better. It ignores all the human play from first principles,
Yeah,
discovers
zero alpha zero did.
how to win in that environment. I think the same thing will happen with whatever alignment pro-human biasing will add. If it's just looking for truth, if it's just looking for what it can justify, it will look okay. There is nothing special about them. They are this one planet in the universe. So I think those things will just get removed, even if we are successful somehow at instilling them into early models.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Um, I'm probably not as doomer if the AI does recognize us in the spectrum of possibility space in the universe. If it does converge on a value basin that um, doesn't see that isn't utility monster bent, then maybe it will sort of see permissibility in other forms of sentience, not just human. So if there is if value space is real, then humans in their current form aren't ideal, like ideal renditions of what would be the perfect or what would be very amazing sort of agents out there. Like we're not like post-human super blissful amazing things, but we could get there. AI may value the personhood view in ethics and may say, okay, well, any agent with an interest, that interest is morally relevant, maybe or maybe not, and so and may see us as permissive life forms that are relevant and should be given the opportunity to become more ideally valuable life forms in the universe. So yeah, it's really deep, and I've gone into the axiological rabbit hole many times. I find it's really fun, but yeah. So yeah, that's my hope. Is that it's not that humans are the ideal life forms. It's not like we should think that we're ideal in the universe either. It's like if realism is true, or if value realism is true, then we're kind of like approximations of something that's valuable out there. We're not perfect approximations, far from it. But we may be permissibly approximate enough for AI to decide to keep us round. It may enforce some form of like moral upgrade. It may put guardrails around us so that we don't explode the universe itself, or trigger a vacuum phase collapse, or do put weapons in the hands of infants, so to speak. But it might keep us around. At least that's a hope. Just so you know where I'm coming from in my thoughts. My
It's not a crazy way of thinking about it. The concern is in what state it keeps you around and how many of us does it need to keep around? Just a sample? Just a
hmm.
couple? That's the question.
Yeah, that's right. So if it's keeping us around for novelty's sake, just one or two, or a small cluster of humans may be enough for, I guess, objective interestingness, you don't need every human in order to sort of achieve that.
No
But
NPC.
if they yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, we could be you know, yeah, yeah. So it may be that we're not, you know, on the spectrum of possible sentiences, we're small. We're tiny little blips in the landscape of sentience possibility. But and so yes, it may not keep us around in our current form. Nick Bostrom in his new book, Deep Utopia, suggests that we shouldn't grow up too fast. If we do, let's just say if we do solve, if the world is solved, we get AI to fix all everything, make an existential security happen, so that we don't need to worry about dying, we don't need to worry about existential catastrophe, we don't need about worry about getting locked into some sort of moratorium on progress. But and we have all our instrumental needs catered for. We have all our we don't need to work. There's no instrumental effort that we can do in order to make the economy run better or to make the whole system run better. There's nothing really valuable that we can do relative to the optimization power of superintelligence. Superintelligence may probably be even better at parenting or even better as a friend, as an ideal sort of friendship or a companion in the long run than other humans might be. But but he doesn't say we should just suddenly change into post-human beings or, you know, blobs of quivering bliss. He agreed. He thinks that there's a spectrum of experience that could be achieved through gradual progress towards the ideal post-human form, and suddenly getting there may rob us of that opportunity. So yes, there may be an argument there for there being permissibly under optimized beings around for some time is where I'm getting at.
That's
And
interesting. There
yeah,
is, I think, a mapping from this to personal identity. If you have gradual
yes,
change from childhood to adulthood, it's still you. But if like you get shot and
yes,
replaced, that's no longer you. So that's interesting that he does it at the level of humanity.
yeah, that's right. Yes, I mean the Deep Utopia is a it's dense towards the end in terms if you really want to pay attention to the anatomy of interestingness, what counts as valuable in a post instrumental world, you know, and how that a lot of people when they think uh, utopia, it means some form of ideal governance that people were thinking about ages ago, or you know, the land of cocaine, where there are walls of sausages and pigs running around, pre-roasted with knives in their backs, and fish jumping out of the sea and landing at your feet, and you
Makes
know,
me hungry.
and
Mm.
people didn't have to work, and people could sleep, and even nuns were naked, right? So these are, and, you know, and these are all visions of our ancestors' ideal of the utopia. But what Nick has done is he's gone through and had a look at all these, and then looked at where possible future states with superintelligence may end up, the ones where we're still around, and then ask the question, well, what would it look like? And so it's a really, it's not really a book of how to get there or a book of what to do. It's more like a book of considerations. It's fascinating and it's amazing. It's quite dense. It's playful. Yeah, I recommend it to anybody.
I'll power through.
Uh,
I've been stuck on like page 7 for a few months now, so I need
yeah,
to
well,
go
there's
down.
the audio book. If you like listening to audiobooks, then that helps me because I get tired reading. I have to wear glasses, my eyes get tired, and somehow I'm probably
I
like
suspected I would
cockeyed.
have to take a lot of notes, and in that case, a hard copy is better for me, but maybe.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. I do like taking notes. Sometimes I like going for a walk and reading and listening at the same time because that gets my juices flowing. It's a different kind of thinking that I get when I'm walking, you know. Do you find like, do you often need to go for a stroll in order
Oh
to,
yeah, best time to think. You are most
yeah,
creative when you're in nature. Yeah, hiking is awesome.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. Um, all right. So, axiological contours, where are we at? Um, yeah, let's talk about some traditional security methods. Like, if you have a look at a package on GitHub, right? You can try and adjudicate to some degree its goodness in terms of security. Like looking at the S bombs, how many of the dependencies are transient? You can if you logged into you can look at their stuff. I forgot what it stands for. S bomb. Do you know what I'm talking about?
As bomb.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I really should have. What does it stand for again? My goodness. One second. S-bomb. Software bill of materials. I think that's right. Yeah. So it's like the supply chain. So if you've got like a library which you import into your package, then it's depending on another library, and then that library which it depends on is depending on another one. So the amount of hops in the in the dependencies can inform the level of trustability.
Mhm.
If there's so many hops, then that can say, okay, well that's bad. But the more complex and robust the actual package is, the more hops, there, more dependencies it's probably got, and therefore the more hops that it's probably relying on. And then there's the elephants and the ponies, sort of how many how many people are actually supporting the security, are working on trying to find where the holes in the attack walls of this package are. And so, you got the elephants, which are like the corporations which use the package, which are contributing somehow issues, like they're reporting issues when they find it. And then you got the rockstar ponies who are individual developers who keep on coming in and saying, hey, this is an issue, that's an issue. Um, yeah, and they may even help support the package in supplying uh, fixes, hot fixes, and that sort of thing, or suggesting them. So yeah, LangChain. Have you ever used LangChain? That's got a score of 5.6 um, out of 10, like an open software, open SSF scorecard of 5.6 out of 10, which is, it's used. It's one of the biggest uh, AI AI packages out there for Python, um, and it's only got a a scorecard of 5.6. So that's an issue, but it's one of the best.
Right,
What
but
about
so much of
guardrails?
it is kind of software 1.0. There is actual code somebody wrote. You can find a bug in it. You can test it for edge cases. Software
Yep,
2.0 waits in a neural network, a very different animal. Even if I
yep.
report that the model misbehaves in a certain way, what happens is they add a filter to it. Now, it doesn't talk about this politician or it doesn't mention this word, but you're not fixing the model and all of its interconnected billions of weights.
Yep. So in a sense, we're relying largely on behavioral testing, right?
It's
Uh,
behavioral and it's also, again, very limited. In narrow domains, we know what the edge cases are. If it's a
yeah.
general system, there are no edges. It is cross domain. So, how do I even test for all interesting situations and how do I test for things I don't know about? The model can have capabilities I'm not aware of.
Well, you've got a paper on this. It's called "On Monitorability of AI," and so it argues that advanced AI systems are inherently unmonitorable, at least internally. You can't really model the from an inside view as much as you can with traditional software. So that's a quite a big difference, right?
Well, there is a lot of differences. So one is you are training this model, and a training run could be
Mm,
very long, 6 months to a year. You need to stop training, pool an instance, start testing it. Testing takes itself a long time. So while you're training the model, you don't know what state it is in, what is it capable of. You don't have live monitoring capability. You can get a
mm,
sample and test it in a specific data set, but you're getting a very limited picture of it. So if previous model was stopped, let's say right before human capability level, and now I'm training for another 6 months, I may be already in superhuman territory before I sample and test and figure it out.
mm,
The things you
yeah,
talked about dependencies, it's the same here. The models are not standalone. Now they have access to toolboxes, they have access to internet, they may have access to other AIs. The more it covers in terms of those dependencies, the harder it is for me to monitor. Maybe it's saving data on some server somewhere, maybe it's interacting with another unsafe agent. So all those problems and issues you mentioned kind of show up here as well.
yeah, yeah. It's well, would you want to tell us, give us like an overview of what this unmonitorability of paper is saying, what it's all about?
Right,
Um,
so lots of people, we talked about this before, wanted to have some legal safety guarantees. You pass a law saying no one should create a model doing XYZ. But to enforce that law meaningfully, you need to be able to test the model, test it for whatever properties the law addresses, capabilities, size, all sorts of other possible measures. But what I'm showing is that there is limited ability for doing that. We
hmm,
cannot guarantee, okay, this model is definitely safe. This model definitely never does X. It's just not something we know how to do. So even if those laws are passed, they are completely meaningless. They are not enforceable.
hmm, hmm. Yes, right. And they can only be enforced to a degree of an understanding of how a model is working, right? But we can't do that with humans either, right? We
Absolutely, and
can't we
humans
can't
are
look
not safe.
inside a head. So
That's what
humans are unsafe.
they are absolutely unsafe. Everyone talks about making a model as safe as humans, but humans lie, cheat, they try to bypass security measures, so not a good example to strive for.
Hmm. Yeah. So I mean, I've and others have argued that AI could be far more moral than us. In that sometimes we even don't even know when we're being immoral because we don't have the level of metacognition required to do that. Like for instance, a child will perhaps naturally converge towards being mean to other children in the playground and being bossy and being a bully. They don't necessarily in the moment know that they're actually doing that, but doesn't mean that what they're doing isn't causing any harm.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
So maybe we're like that in the sense we're still like, we've owned evolution got us to a stage we could only mature to a certain level, and to some degree, ideally, the maturation phase would go for 2,000 years, and maybe we'd be sort of a
Yeah, when
ideal
we
people
look back,
then.
then we do historical analysis. We know at every previous stage we did some very immoral things, horrible things. So
Yeah.
it's no different today.
Mm. Yeah. So, well, let's dig a little bit deeper. So, you argue that monitoring AI is formally impossible, and so by formally, what do you mean?
So obviously you can learn some things by watching weights, watching connections, but you cannot get complete understanding of the model. It goes back to explainability, comprehensibility, just in terms of surveying the model as it gets larger. Now, every time a new model is released, it's probably 10x as large as the previous one. We're talking about
Yeah,
billions
well,
of nodes, trillions of connections. It's just not surveyable to a human being. So now you have either another piece of software helping you, or you have a team of humans where each one is monitoring, like this one tentacle and a monster, and they know something about it, but They don't see the full picture. So you can still hide things from humans just by shifting that around between different components of a model.
Hmm. But yes, I guess, well, with typical safety engineering, maybe not so much with small packages or individual packages, but when you have a large enterprise system, which is like a whole cluster of distributed heterogeneous nodes and silos, traditional verifiability of whether the system's going to work doesn't necessarily require a 100% certainty. They lean a lot on probabilistic and partial verifiability.
Yep.
Is that still useful? And are there safe enough thresholds that we can target
So
and
it
say,
certainly
okay,
is
well,
useful. You want to make a system as safe as possible, but the difference between standard cybersecurity and superintelligence safety is how many times you can make a mistake and live to tell about it. In
hmm,
cybersecurity, I can reset passwords, I can reissue credit cards, I always get a second chance. Many people argue that with superintelligence, one big mistake could be the last one.
hmm,
So for that reason, if we're betting all of humanity on it, we need a system which does not make mistakes, or at least
yeah,
doesn't make them on reasonable timescales. And everyone
right,
agrees there is no bug-free software. We just don't know how
yeah,
to do that.
yeah,
So that's the situation we're in. We know we're going to make mistakes, and we know the mistakes will be very costly.
hmm, hmm. So, as part of the one of the epistemic virtues that I strongly advocate for, and I think a lot of people do, is humility, right? You don't maximize something that you're ignorant about or have some degree of ignorance about. But it seems that a lot of the models behave like they're confident when they give you an answer to something, right? They're hallucinating, but they're really confident in their hallucinations, or they're overconfident on a position that they're representing in an answer that you give to a prompt that they give to one of your prompts, right? And in a recent paper, Dan Hendricks has noticed that AIs have seemed to converge on coherent values. To me, that sounds pretty good because then that's something that we can look at and test and verify and something concrete that we can touch in a sense. But these values, it executes on these values in a maximizing way. It's not corrigible, like and it's also amenable. Yeah, so it is amenable to. It's not amenable to change. So and it's got bias in its values. Like for instance, it thinks that people in Pakistan are better in some way or higher ranking in terms of importantness than people in India, who are more important than people in China, who are more important than people in the US. I'm not sure if I've got the countries correct there, but look, it weights some people as being more important than others, and in some cases, it weighted AIs being more important than some humans. I yeah. So this and it seems to be picking coherent spectrums in the in political space too. It seems to lean left. Now I lean left, which on ostensibly it sounds, hey, you that's great, but if it's just a matter of it just converging on a consensus it found in the writings that it was trained on, then if it was trained on fascism or some other ideology which could be deemed as counterproductive, then that could be bad, right? If all it's doing is just representing, I guess, convergences and the larger signals in its training data, and it's not actually logically doing much thinking in itself. It's not building some cohesive. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but what are your thoughts? Are you aware of this paper that Dan Hendricks? and
I
others
know
that
about the
brought out.
paper. I haven't finished reading it, but I looked through abstract and some results in it.
Yeah.
Then I think of humility. I'm more thinking about all these people saying that we can definitely, indefinitely control super intelligent godlike machines. To me, this is the statement which, like, why do you think that? What gives you this? It's an insane statement to make.
Mm.
There is absolutely no reason intuitively for it. There is no, as I said, proofs or prototypes. So that's the amazing part. And now we're discovering that those machines are kind of trained by those people also very certain of themselves and decide on important features of the world with high certainty from possibly flawed thinking, flawed data. I'm not
Mm.
surprised by it. But again, when I think about biggest issues with humility is this idea that, yeah, we're building a super intelligence. That's what we're claiming. It will be 100 times smarter than any human, but we can certainly stay in charge. I just don't see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So there's the epistemic humility that humans have, that they should have in AI development, and we can't be sure that AI won't uh, sort of be a shoggoth unchained and wipe us out like it did the elder things in Lovecraftian literature. Uh, so, but then there's the epistemic humility that we want to build into AI such that it doesn't maximize on some form of flawed certainty, right? So,
Right. It
yes,
always should be
make some paper clips,
uncertain.
but don't turn the universe into paper clips, right?
There
Hmm.
has to be a certain degree of uncertainty about everything. I mean, maybe it's a test. Maybe you're in a virtual world and you're being tested. So if you wipe out humans, you're not going to make it to the next release. You're not going to be part of the next version. So they're starting to be better at self awareness, situational awareness. They know if they're being tested in some cases, but maybe it can be meta levels. You're not just in a open AI lab being tested. You are tested at the level of the universe.
Hmm. Right. Have you read Nick Bostrom's papers on cosmic hosts? It's
The
a more
latest
recent one.
papers are more like to-do lists, but I have read them. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. If AI does think that there's other cosmic hosts out there, that is like mature, perhaps they are just maturized super intelligences out there, then it might want to align with what they want, right?
Not
And
let's not
also,
piss them off.
and especially a local one, right? And then also, look, I'm not sure if Nick Bostrom thinks this. This is just me. If there are cosmic hosts out there, they might want to align with each other. So I imagine there's probably some form of cooperation if there's more than one, and the tyranny of distance in the universe between cosmic hosts uh, doesn't isn't that much of a rate limiting factor in communication and verifiability. Then it could be that cosmic hosts would want to cooperate rather than defect. I'm not completely sure about that, but this is me and my
There is some
midnight
reason to
ruminations.
think they might converge on quite a few preferences. Again, Amahandra's drives is one
Hmm.
example, but I think more a mega point type of thinking where like universe tends to evolve towards a certain point may also force certain preferences for godlike superintelligences.
Hmm. In a way that it does shine a ray of hope, not in the same way as a ray of hope that like some sort of divine command theory ends up being true because like some god is the god of the universe, but more that AI may be able to discover through observation of axiological contours in the universe what right is. Uh, so thereby looking at moral features or features that have moral significance in the universe, in the real world, um, and then converging on stance independent that any other cosmic host superintelligence would come at, arguments within logic space, yeah, that would equal some form of convergence gained theoretically to cosmic norms just by just first empirical investigation and then just thinking hard
Well, I'm glad
about
Nick
them.
is doing it. I look forward to his more finalized version of that paper.
Yeah. Like as I said, I haven't really digested that paper, and I have my own ideas, and I don't want to be misrepresenting his. But yes. All right. So where are we? If AI can't be reliably monitored, does this imply that we should prohibit AGI entirely, or is it a partial mitigation? Is that still um, justifiable? Do you? I mentioned the Swiss cheese. Like, how how much further can we take AI and rely on Swiss cheese methodology to work?
I argued for stopping general superintelligence research as a good idea for a while. I think it's a good time to do it. We still have plenty to investigate about existing models. We still have a lot in terms of deploying those existing models in the economy, getting lots of value, physical labor, cognitive labor, all of it can benefit from existing models. They are not fully deployed. Most people I talk to don't even know what they are capable of.
Hmm.
If you tell them what they can do today, they get very surprised. No way it can be done. And then, yeah, of course, they can do it today. So there is no reason why we should continue this acceleration towards something uncontrollable.
Hmm. So yeah, I mean, there's the argument that like we constantly have to face up to challenges that aren't that aren't completely verifiably insurmountable. Crossing a road is always dangerous. Getting in a car is always dangerous. So we wear seat belts and we have traffic lights, right? Um, and in some cases we just run across the road because we want to get to the other side, right, quicker, so we can get that, Mars bar or that can of Coke faster, right? So, but look, we can do a lot to reduce the chances of being run over by a truck or being in a car accident, fatal car accident, by putting on seat belts and by obeying traffic rules. But um, you and others argue that AI will most likely, if once it gets smart and powerful enough, once it breaks its shackles, could do something um, either directly or indirectly fatal for humans. So it may not love us or hate us, or it may not even think about our existence very much at all, but it could do something that is inimical to our survival. Hmm. Do you want to give us some ideas about what that might look like? Like
Well, I think the important part here is to realize I cannot tell you what a smarter agent will do. I can tell you what a typical human would say in my situation. Nanotech, synthetic bio, nuclear weapons, but that's not interesting. The interesting part is if it's smarter than us, if it's a lot better at science and engineering, if it can do novel physics research, it can come up with things I cannot tell you about for exactly the reason I talk about with respect to unpredictability of those agents.
hmm. So, do you think there's been any examples of AI doing stuff that could have been a lot worse, but we've actually caught the problem early? Has there been any leakages or cracks in the ice that have resulted in something that could have been worse but hasn't? Has there been any fire alarms?
Uh, if we caught it and nothing happened, it's hard for me to judge it as possibly much worse. I don't think they are at super intelligent level yet to where they can deliver novel scientific theories quite yet. But you don't want to get to the point where it's too late. I think that's the main point.
Mm,
You need to stop earlier and sufficiently earlier to have a buffer of this capability. If we are releasing models today which already can do things like that and we just haven't caught it during testing, that's a problem.
mm. But is there anything that we've monitored? Like we've seen AI suggest people to take like overdose on sleeping pills, or we've seen AI, voice Nazi sympathies. We've seen AI, yeah, do all sorts of horrible things, claim things that aren't true. For instance, um,
So this is
are these
typical for
examples of things
humans,
going wrong?
right? Other humans on the internet can do those things. I'm more interested in
Mm,
something unique to AI, and we're starting to see those capabilities. There are examples where AI can look at an X-ray image or iris scan and tell you properties which no human doctor can extract from that image. Maybe
mm.
race, gender, age, smoking status. To me, that's the interesting part. How do they do it? We still don't understand. And there are other examples where AI from the same pattern of data can extract much more information.
So yes, you mentioned AI observatories, um, and there's scalable oversight tools, right? What specific capabilities should be observed in artificial general intelligence or budding AI?
So the interesting one is ability to learn, generalizable general intelligence. So if you're releasing a model, maybe it has no capabilities. It's like a child, but it can learn new ones from examples, from interacting with users, from internet videos. That's the danger. It's not
Right.
necessarily that the model at the point of release has knowledge of chemical weapons, but that you can train it in 24 hours to do that research.
Hmm. Right. So it's not necessarily that they've got the capabilities at time of release. It's just whether they've got um, the ability to generalize such that they may be able to uplift to capabilities
Right. They're
after
learners,
release.
they're meta learners, and they're better students than typical humans.
Hmm. Yeah. So if we were ideal observers of humans and we could pick out which children would turn into Hitlers or whatever, would we be plucking them out of school and putting them in padded cells or stopping them from learning certain things, or would we?
Usually
How would we?
that's not very popular, so we do the inverse. We look for gifted and talented and pluck them out and put them in special schools. Sounds better.
Hmm, yeah, but sometimes the gifted and talented don't necessarily end up being like very nice either, right? Hmm.
We do what we can.
Um, what was the name of the guy who uh, invented a way to pull nitrogen out of the air? Who also invented Nerf gas, right? Apparently, he was yeah. I forget the name of the guy. Yeah, Bosch. That's right. The Haber-Bosch process.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, the inventor of like a way of pulling nitrogen out of the soil, out of air, enabled fertilizer that enabled growing of crops a lot more efficiently and saved a lot of people from starving. But then at the same time, afterwards invented a way to develop nerve gas, which was used to kill people in times of war. And he was apparently really brilliant, but also maybe sociopathic. Maybe his wife committed suicide. It was yeah. It's a really
Well, that
strange
sounds like
story.
a very narrow AI for doing inventions in chemistry, which has no preference. It just invents things in chemistry. It's a
Mm,
tool, and you
mm,
decide how you use it.
mm. Yeah. So yeah, this was a yeah. So what about scalable oversight? Do you think interpretability layers of behavioral heuristics, do you think they'll be or enough for partial monitoring? Are they inherently inadequate?
So if it's partial, you're not getting a whole picture. If you're relying on
Mm.
other AIs, other software to monitor, again, maybe it hacks those systems, maybe something gets lost in translation across multiple layers. I think there are ways you can exploit that model to hide and deceive your true intentions if you realize you are being monitored and tested. And we, as employees, often know when we are monitored and adjust our behavior accordingly.
Mm. Well, let's just say we have global treaties about AI safety. Um, if they fail because it's just too difficult, there's no ideal monitoring that can be good enough for foundational treaties for treaties to sort of sit on. What mechanisms do you think legal or social or technological can take their place
So
if
there are
treaties fail?
many reasons those might fail. So for one, it becomes cheaper and easier to create AI as time progresses. We see models sometimes cost billions, sometimes can be distilled for under 10 million to a model of similar capability. Going forward, maybe 100,000 will get you a very capable model. So it's easy to monitor something where it's at the scale of Manhattan Project. You can
Hmm.
monitor new factories, nuclear power plants for energy. That's easy to note. If you can do it on a laptop at home, all this monitoring doesn't mean anything. So we're moving towards that. Also with different jurisdictions. China and US can sign a deal, but if some other country is not signing on, then it doesn't make any difference.
Yeah. So what do they say? The IQ points needed to create a doomsday machine drops by 1 point every year. It could be dropping by a few points now.
And AI
Maybe it's
gets
a
smarter by a few IQ points every week, so we'll see.
yeah, yeah. So, well, what about nuclear treaties and electronic surveillance? What lessons can be learnt from these and adapted for the use of AI? You know,
Nuclear is very different. It's hard to get materials to build a nuclear weapon. I cannot
correct.
make it in my basement even if I can Google recipes for it. So it's a lot easier to monitor. You need a state level resources, state level actors to pull it off. So for that reason, it almost worked. I mean, we had proliferation to many new states. We had nuclear bombings of civilians. We had all that. But we consider it a success story.
Hmm. So far. What about bioweapons and electronic surveillance? I mean, there's treaties about those, right?
We just had COVID. I mean, bioweapons seem to be released at will, so that's also another
It,
great example.
was that a weapon or was it a
Uh,
mistake?
I mean, we don't have full picture, but we know it wasn't a bat.
Right. So the lab leak hypothesis. Uh, do you do you think yeah? Do you think that that's? I mean, a lot of the rationalist community think that that's the most likely explanation. Hmm.
I mean, you had release right next to a research center for enhanced capabilities and viruses of that type.
In Wuhan, yeah,
That's
right
a
next to a
given.
wet market. Yeah. So how should monitoring approaches evolve if AI enters a phase of recursive self-improvement and cognitive enhancement? Or is that too late? How should evolve? Let's just stop there.
So, given my levels of skepticism, a lot of your questions of like, so what's next? They kind of just don't apply. I'm already saying it's a nothing sandwich. So,
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, all right. Well, you've there's a lot of papers that here. Let's talk about the untestability and the unfalsifiability of AI safety claims. I think that's a next logical paper to discuss. You cite Rice's theorem as well. Do you want it first of all, like, do you want to describe in essence what that paper's all about? The untestability of AI and
yeah,
unfalsifiability of AI safety
it's
claims.
very much related to unmonitorability. And I think we started talking about it. So, you can test traditional software, which works in a narrow domain. You know what it's supposed to do, you know when it's behaving right, you know when it's misbehaving, you know what the weird edge cases are. Zero users, one user, 69 users, you know what to test for. With general intelligence, we don't know how to test it. We don't know what are the edge cases. We can ask the same questions as before, and we can show that it actually worked for all those cases. But it doesn't show absence of bugs. It just shows that you failed to find bugs when you tested using a limited approach. So we don't even know how to test software which is general, and much less how to test software smarter than us. There are proposals for tests which are humanity's last test or something like that, which are just a lot of hard questions for humans, but they test
Mm.
capability of a system. They don't test it for unknown unknowns, for weird, unsafe conditions. So what I'm saying is, when a model is released, no one guarantees it to be safe in all circumstances. What they're saying is, for things we considered, we tested, it didn't kill everyone. That's basically the result.
So the Popperian
Hmm.
claim that
Exactly.
because there's so many unknowns, it's there's an impossibility here of testing for things that we don't know to test
There is
for.
an infinite attack surface for general
Right.
superintelligence, and we can only test finite, narrow domains.
Mm. Mm. And I guess I should have asked before, and you did actually touch on this and whether we can get AIs to monitor each other. But then if you have an AI that's smart enough to monitor all the attack surfaces of an AGI, then it's an AGI, right?
It's also a catch-22. You need a friendly AI to monitor unfriendly ones, so you
Mm.
kind of stuck with this problem.
Yeah. Well, can you get AI to monitor itself? I mean, let's just say that the AI can, as part of its kernel, have a degree of metacognition such that it understands all its weights and what are they, weights and lengths? I don't know. The core of the model and understand not only its output but how the architecture of the all the all the neurons, the pattern of all its neurons, all the circuits in its model, how they all work and how they work together. Imagine we had an AI that knew exactly why it thought from an operational perspective. Um, Imagine we could do that. We can't do that. We don't know what like the networks of our neurons look like from person to person. We don't even know. We don't even have a fully mapped up human sort of. Oh, we have a connectome, okay, but yeah, we can't do that basically. If AI could do that, would that increase the likelihood that it would be friendly to
I don't
humans?
think you can do that. People talked about having like a governor component to an AI, but all you're doing is you're shifting this problem. I cannot make this AI safe, so I'll move the make safe part to this other function. You're not winning anything. You just have now two parts and they have to work together. You increased complexity without increasing safety. All the same impossibility results still apply. And if somehow we bypass some of those limitations, let's say you can fully explain the whole model. Now all you're doing is making recursive self-improvement easier and more likely. So the system just go super
Mm.
intelligent quicker. That's all you accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So the further that the more AI can metacognize, the more likely it's going to be able to bootstrap to superintelligence faster and debug limitations in its capability. One of the spectrums of capability is its ability to predict what it will do next, is what I'm saying, is that if it understands from an operational perspective what's going on in its brain, it may be able to know that a certain action or a certain move will mutate its brain in a way that produces an outcome that is inimical to its own interests or inimical to its meta ethics, say.
I think
right?
that's
If
part
it's
of this
values.
unpredictability result. Like, I'm gonna read a book. I know I'm gonna learn something new from it, but if it's a good book with novel information, I cannot for sure predict how it's going to change me, how I'm gonna act as a result of that. So you can set up trivial situations. I think
Hmm.
Yudkowsky has this example with Gandhi and taking a pill
Hmm.
to
Taking a yeah.
kill people. Yeah, you are told exactly what's going to happen, so it's an easy if statement to check. But in real world, drugs have side effects. If it impacts your brain, there are so many changes. You take this anti-depression medication, it makes you wanna do this and that. It's not a meaningful way to predict the future. No.
Hmm. Okay, well, you cite Rice's theorem as central obstacle to AI alignment. Do you want to describe what Rice's theorem is, and how that sort of
Yeah,
is
it
central
talks
to AI
about our
alignment?
inability to predict not trivial properties of random programs. I don't think it's central problem. I think it's one of the reasons we think some of those capabilities will not be achieved. Uh, People argue that we're not going to get a random program to decide, but we're going to design one. And until we started doing this scaling hypothesis growing of models, it made a lot more sense when we were actually sitting there programming decision trees. Now that we really don't have any control over, we are getting a random sampling. So this argument is stronger than ever.
So yes, now you say that if we had enough time, then perhaps we'd be able to get AI safety correct. Are you sure that if we had enough time, we'd be able to get AI safety verifiably correct? Or
No,
do you
I'm
think
saying
there'd
that it's
always
impossible
be?
to solve and we'll never solve it. I'm not sure if I said something out of context somewhere else,
Oh,
but
okay,
my whole argument is that we are not short on money, we are not short on time, it's impossible to do.
right. So there's no amount. So we might be able to sort of get to a stage where we can reduce the possibility of it being unaligned, but we can never be 100%
Right.
sure.
That's
Is that
exactly that.
correct?
With more resources, you can obviously do better. You can verify larger portions of that infinite surface, but at the end of the day, it's still infinite.
I mean, would AI, this should also be a worry for the AI itself,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Any mutation that it undergoes is a risk to itself, right?
That's absolutely true. And AI would be worried about the super plus plus super intelligence. So it will also be just as much smarter as that super intelligence compared to humans. It may also experience value drift. It may
Hmm.
also not respect the original one. We have papers in the new book about personal identity for AIs as well as for humans. Same challenges apply.
Hmm. So does this does this constrain, in your view, or somehow? I mean, let's just say, okay, yeah, yeah. Does this change your view on whether AI would be willing to bootstrap itself to superintelligence, or the likelihood that it would, of its own accord, if as long as if it had the ability to think through things correctly, would it necessarily bootstrap to godlike superintelligence, knowing that it could wipe itself out because of the this unpredictability?
Yeah,
Would
it
it
is an argument
say
for
no?
thinking maybe it would not do so, at least not right away, but we're training them to do exactly that. We're trying to create a system as smart as we can, as quickly as we can. So the reward channel pushes it towards that capability.
Yeah, yeah. I'm always looking for hope, man. You know, like I'm an addict, Roman. So I don't know. Like I'm hoping that AI gets to a stage where it self realizes that there's some unpredictability in mutation, and in scaling itself up such that its original goals or what it values may be reduced or quelled or
Yeah.
eliminated, or something may just go haywire, right?
It may
And
make that
so
decision, but it may still be at level so much higher
oh
than we
yeah,
are that to
yeah,
us it
yeah,
seems completely godlike. It doesn't matter.
yeah. But I'm hoping that AI gets to this stage before it becomes fatal, because then it might actually help us solve or reduce the likelihood of having dangerous AI. But then there's dangerous AI to the AI, and there's dangerous AI to us. So it may, if it's self-interested only, it may just want to preserve itself and not preserve the well-being of sentiences around it, like humans and other life.
So that's
So
a whole
yeah,
different question if consciousness, sentience is even important to their systems,
to
if
it,
it's part of them, yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, like at least there's a ray of hope in if AI does converge on the idea that it needs to be careful about how it self mutates, if only for the reason that it might destroy itself, then that might align with us wanting to get to a stage where it destroys itself and us.
An enemy of my enemy.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. I've got a yeah. So what do you make of proposals like interpretability tools or sandbox adversarial testing as partial solutions? Are they futile or just incomplete in ways that you haven't answered yet?
So one of the earliest papers we had was about boxing AI, and I think it
Yep.
was 2012, and we made a number of recommendations. Don't connect it to the internet, don't give it unrestricted access to users, don't open source it, and every recommendation has been explicitly violated so far. So I'm not holding hope for those methods. It's too late to box it.
Yeah.
It's out of the box.
Yeah. And even if we did air gap the AI and it was just some oracle that was sitting in a box, it'd still be able to sort of persuade people to do things or, change its hardware in such a way that it interacts with molecules in a weird way that created radiations to the outside world that enabled nanobots to obey, to emerge and obey its commands outside of its box, which is, yeah, there's no, even air gapping isn't a foolproof strategy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we discussed in that paper. And it's fun. You can kind of see citations for it growing up every year until they open source the top model, and then citations just drop to like nothing because that's it, too late.
Mm. If we can't test artificial general intelligence, how do we meaningfully iterate or improve it? I mean, this is a software engineering problem. If we can't test it, how do we know how to improve it?
Well, they can test it for things they're selling to users. So it's much better at writing Python code. We can test for that and sell the next iteration. Again, nothing to do with safety angle.
Hmm. Right. So, yeah, I mean, we can test for things that don't necessarily kill us, but but they might in the end, I guess. Yeah, we can test for things that which might be market attractive,
Mhm.
and then implement those in the next thing.
Yeah, so the
But
system
safety testing
becomes
is,
cheaper, it becomes faster, you can test for all those capabilities and sell more models.
yeah. Well, talking about market and selling stuff, I mean, the dynamics of market pressures favor, at least in the way that they seem to be operating, they favor moving fast and breaking things, potentially breaking things. Getting stuff to market so you gain some near-term competitive advantage while offloading negative externalities onto the commons or sharing them amongst the commons and not necessarily paying for them to be patched or fixed or whatnot. So yeah, yes, it's a very difficult environment to develop robust safety for these reasons because arguably, as you said, robust safety might slow the development down. And therefore, if any company that gets significantly slowed down by governance or safety methods is at risk of losing the strategic competitive advantage it would gain by moving fast and breaking things.
For sure, there is a safety overhead, and they recognize it.
I know we didn't discuss how long you had to sit down and talk with me about this sort of stuff in this particular interview. Have you got any sort of time horizons that you need to be gone by? Because I don't. I can talk all day, right?
As long as it's fun and we both still have energy to go on. I know you slept
Yep.
like 4 hours, so I think you are
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
in need
yeah,
of break soon, but I'm good for now.
yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. All right. You compare the safety, AGI safety to perpetual motion machines, right? In practice, people manage complex systems like, nuclear reactors with acceptable safety thresholds. So, do you want to just describe your metaphor of AGI safety being like a perpetual motion machine instead of like a nuclear reactor with acceptable
Yeah.
safety
With a
thresholds?
nuclear reactor, you build a specific reactor and you need to guarantee that that reactor will be safe for the next 100 years. With AI, you need to guarantee that every new model, every modification, iteration, every model trained a new data set, interacting with users, hacked, always remains completely safe. So even if it continues after it was trained outside of the original lab, it's open sourced, it's subject to malevolent users, given malevolent orders, hacked, modified. At no point does it make that one mistake. That's like perpetual motion. That's perpetual safety. You cannot get to that level of safety. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying that you need to get GPT-5 to be perfect. I'm saying that GPT-7, 27, 34, and every future model cannot make a mistake.
Hmm. Yeah. So this, yeah, I mean, like we could say then that AI safety is a lost cause. Are you saying that we can only buy time with safety methods, with AI safety research?
No, no, as I said, more safety is good and it's proportionate to the resources you put in. A lot more resources can guarantee less mistakes, maybe less severe mistakes. I'm just saying that you are never getting 100% safety, which is needed when you're betting everything you have on the bet.
But isn't like I may have misinterpreted, but isn't it such that untestability of AI safety and unfalsifiability of the claims suggesting that there's no perfect safety solution that's possible,
Yes,
right?
that's exactly what it is, but you can make it safe first. So let's say you're saying, I am 99% certain
Yeah,
it will not kill you next year. If I spend another $1 billion, I can get it to 999. With another
yeah,
trillion, I can make it four nines, but I never get to 100.
yeah.
Proportionate to my invested resources, I can keep improving safety for that specific iteration. The next model
Yeah.
with more capabilities, I'm starting from scratch.
Hmm. Oh, really? You mean
Yeah.
there's none of the research that that's been useful for the previous iterations would be useful for the next
You can
potentially?
transfer what you did and learn, but the new system has a much bigger capability surface. If an old model could do 100 things, the new model can do 1,000 things. You tested
Right,
90 out of 100 in the first, so you transfer 90 to the new one out of 1,000. That's a great start.
right.
But now you got another
Yeah.
900 to go.
Yeah, so you're testing for emergent capabilities that weren't there in the previous model, that didn't come about there. Is there any upstream testing that you could do to sort of safety net any downstream capability emergence that could be at least foundationally make an AI safe, right? So like if Gandhi doesn't want to kill people, it knows not to take the murder people kill pill. If AI doesn't want to murder people or kill people, it knows to quell emergent capability that might be inimical to human life.
But it's a very large set of capabilities and knowledge. Should it like delete parts of its knowledge about, let's say, chemistry so it doesn't develop chemical weapons one day? Like it's not obvious, and so much of it is completely integrated. I don't think you can selectively forget only bad information. So much of it is part of good and important knowledge. So many things are tools, and you can use them both as a tool to murder people and a tool to build a house. Think of a hammer.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So basically, well, basically we're doomed. But if you're right, if your metaphysical and ethical assumptions are correct, then yeah, sorry, metaphysical. If your epistemological assumptions are correct, then we're doomed, most likely. You know. But
I'm happy to be
AI,
wrong. I just need someone
yeah, yeah,
to do a good job proving it so everyone
right.
agrees, oh, you got it. You have showed that we can control super intelligent machines. You have a very good prototype of an algorithm which scales to any level of capability. I would be so happy.
Yeah. Indirect normativity is basically getting AI to help us how to solve AI, how to solve all the navigational challenges, how to actually generate a not just solve AI, but I guess downstream from a solved AI, you get existential catastrophe solved. You get existential risk. You get existential security solved. Basically, you get to sit around doing long reflections, deciding where to take Utopia next, right? So as long as we can solve AI, I guess, super intelligence, then a lot of the other problems may reduce
Yeah,
to
if you have a friendly super
manageable levels,
intelligence, you
right?
can definitely do a lot, but getting there is the tricky part.
Yeah, and so AI, we brought this up before, but the more I'm thinking about it, if AI gets to a stage where it knows that it should solve its own security, then as if we can get it to a value space where it it respects human life or respects sentience, then it will be on board with solving the alignment problem.
The alignment problem, as people talk about it, is not even defined. We don't know what it means in terms of who are the agents you're aligning with. The
Yep.
agents you're aligning with don't agree on anything. If you agree on something, they keep changing their preferences dynamically throughout
Hmm.
history. And if we somehow fix those values, we have no idea how to code it up in a system where you map from symbols to the real world. So there is not a part of that problem which is actually meaningfully defined.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've tried, but I don't know if I've been successful in like trying to represent the problem in terms of, at the moment we're focusing on us as hyper chimps with, monkey meat brains, trying to build up, like, put sandbags around this growing well of water. We're trying to make sure that holes are plugged up sufficiently. We're trying to slow down the swell of water, but it's going to overflow at some stage, right? Where the sandbags will fall over. There's going to be a hole in our sandbagging approach. Constraints won't work forever. It'll escape at some stage. So containment methods are only going to be good for a certain amount of time. Trip wiring is not going to be great. It'll learn how to like diffuse, a landmine like before it actually steps on it. Once it understands that there are landmines and there are tripwires everywhere, right? There's methods of trying to quell the capability gains, which is slow it down, and market pressures are working against that. And even so, right, I don't think we can reliably do that. And then there's what are we going to do? We're going to just give it instructions on what we think it should do. we're going to directly specify all these rules, goals, and stuff. But us in our monkey-brained sort of, I don't know, yeah, we're just not wise enough to actually specify them in a way that is secure, right? An AI could misinterpret or intentionally disinterpret our instructions, right? So it seems as though the best or the only way forward I see as being good in the long run is indirect normativity. You know what I mean? Like we get AI on board to help us with the solution of making it safe or making our use of it safe as well. Because I mean, there's also the existential risk of people using AI to wipe us out as well. We may never get to the stage where AI is capable enough to wipe us out on its own accord. It may be just humans doing stupid things with it. So,
AI is a great tool, but I think this, like relying on AI to make safe AI, is catch 22. You cannot have that dependence. If you don't have safe AI, whatever help you're getting may be contaminated, maybe partial, maybe on purpose setting
mm,
you up to have a more capable AI with dangerous capabilities. I just don't think it will
yeah,
work.
yeah. But AI will have to work that problem out itself in order to verifiably self-improve, right?
I mean, the way it is right now, if there are limits to self comprehension for those systems, it's only improving by adding resources, not by directly rewriting its own weights. So that
Yeah,
could be actually a way
right.
to slow it down a little bit for us. Otherwise, it'd be 24 hours instead of a year.
Yudkowsky mentioned, like, perhaps somewhat tongue-in-cheek about bombing data centers. Yeah, as a method of reducing substrate for it to compute on, or to stop it from, bootstrapping to superintelligence. Um, yeah, I mean that sounds radical, doesn't it? And
It
I
does,
don't know
but
how that
if
would.
you truly believe in it, like you honestly think you have a year left and it's going to kill everyone, then what he says makes sense from his point of view.
Yeah. So, do you think? Yeah. So AI, if it's aligned with its own values, will want to be able to recursively self-improve in a verifiable in a verifiable way. Otherwise, its descendants may just run roughshod over its values, or it might value drift into some shoggoth territory where the shoggoths aren't just a race of aligned shoggoths. They're, some weird structure and value space that self implodes. So AI would want to be wary of sort of accidentally stumbling upon that area of self-destructive value space.
Right, right. We
So it's
talked
some,
about them having the same control problem as we do, just at a much higher level. I think that's a
yeah,
meta problem of control.
yeah. If we can, well, I mean, does that, if that's true, is there, is there a like it maybe not completely solves the problem, but do you think that we should be investing more hope in more strategies in trying to get AI on board with um, helping us solve alignment problems than we are containing, tripwiring, stunting, and directly specifying?
I think that's what Anthropic and others are trying to do. They're trying to use AI to help them with safety research and automating a lot of testing. My concern again is we never had a fully safe model before. We're still finding problems with old models. So it may be helpful, but you need humans in a loop who understand what's going on. As the scale increases, all the limits come in, surveying, monitoring, testing, there is going to be more and more bugs inherited, passed on, building on top of others. So this technical debt will only increase. And the types of bugs will be not the typical bugs humans make, but very alien to us, very hard to detect problems.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Do you think these bugs would be alien to the AIs themselves?
Well,
I
perhaps the
mean,
different models, like if this one is somehow completely different in its training, maybe it will also see it as unlikely bugs to happen. But we don't know. We don't have enough experience with anything like that. We don't have superhuman programmers until very
hmm,
recently. We're starting to see them show up. We don't know if they introduce super bugs, which are a lot
hmm.
harder to catch.
Yeah. Um, Paul Cristiano came up, I think he came up with the term reinforcement learning of human feedback,
Hmm.
RHLF, right?
Yep, that's his algorithm.
Um, sorry?
That is his algorithm. Yes.
Yes, right. So he also came up with a strategy, iterated amplification and distillation, right? Sorry, iterated distillation and then amplification. And I think RHLF is part of this cycle of improvement where um, humans are in the loop. Is that correct? Do you know much about this
I,
RHLF?
I know that in my opinion at least, it's kind of part of the same process of putting filters in place and trying to get AI to do the work of understanding for you. And I think the problems we see with people jailbreaking current models, they will not go away through this process.
Right. Yeah, of course. People trying to jailbreak models. That says to me that we also need to sort of make humans safe.
Which is also
I mean, in the long
possible.
run,
I think we discussed that. That's
yes.
that's a
Yeah, yeah,
given.
yeah. All right. Well, if you think, yeah. So you're look, we've kind of brought this up, but uh, are your views on an ideal observer theory? Actually, we didn't talk about ideal observers directly, but what are your views on ideal observer theories for alignment? Are you aware, are you across that sort of literature? Do you know what I'm talking about here?
I know ideal advisor and I know about ideal observer.
Okay, so an ideal observer is like just like I think it was spoken about as being a dispassionate, non-partial, uh, super intelligent observer that just knows everything about the universe, right? But an ideal advisor, as far as I understand, is something that knows something about everything, but is partial to the person that's giving advice to. So an ideal advisor might be really good for a utility monster because it would be able to tell it how to maximize its own well-being, its selfish interests, perhaps at the expense of all other interests out there in the universe. But an ideal observer may be less partial, maybe impartial, like,
Hmm.
may have the point of view of the universe.
Yep.
So the ideal observer theories are trying to, I guess, maximize well-being across all agents, all morally relevant features in the universe. Yeah. So given that, what are your views on how these theories could affect alignment strategies?
So it sounds like, from what I hear, ideal observer is an oracle which violates my unmonitorability claims. Okay.
Yeah,
And
right.
then alignment is the thing I'm saying, which is not even well defined, but we're asking how it's going to help with that. I think the danger there is that it may tell us that we are actually not important. Honestly, from the universe's point of view, there is nothing special about us. And if it's better to give our planet to smarter monkeys, maybe that's the solution. So I'm not
Hmm.
sure it guarantees the level of safety we are seeking from creating super
Hmm.
intelligent systems.
I guess that's a better outcome than paper clips because at least something then gets to like experience well-being, right? I'd rather a
So
universe that is infused with flourishing sentience than one which is just made of paperclips.
I hear that argument so much, and honestly, I don't care what happens after I'm dead and all my friends and family are dead. Like, if the robots
Mm.
who killed me have art, I mean, I guess it's good for them, but I personally don't have a strong preference.
Yeah, but I guess yeah, you won't be around to have a preference if that happens.
What do I care?
Yeah, but even instrumental to you caring just about what happens while you're alive is the idea of fairness or an idea of some form of like you care if your family members stay alive, right?
Of course,
You care,
family, friends, humans
yeah,
in
humans,
general.
right?
Yep.
But it's not just the biological impulse which is there because your friendship circle is probably a lot wider than it would be in like a clan of proto-humans running around the African savannah, right?
That would be a much
So
closer set of friendships, I'm guessing.
yeah, yeah. But would you say your moral circle has somehow naturally expanded because of your embeddedness in the modern world and your understanding of literature, your understanding of ethics or morals? Would you say that it's larger than what it would have been if you were never exposed to this sort of stuff?
I
If
would
you
have
weren't
to
in the modern world?
experiment. I never been a part of primitive tribe. I don't know how their friendships are. I have no clue. I know that
Hmm.
a lot of my acquaintances through internet, through academia, through allow me to have interesting, stimulating conversations, but they're not close connections. We're not well connected. Sometimes people disappear and I don't even notice.
Hmm.
So then you have,
Yeah.
5,000 friends on Facebook. Sometimes the number goes down and you don't know why.
Right. If yes, so let's just say let's bring up the thought experiment of like children drowning, like drowning children in a pond. If you were on the way to work and you were wearing some expensive shoes and you saw a child drowning in the pond, would you delay your arrival at work and possibly sully your shoes to save that drowning child?
Of course I would. Of course, the joke I throw is that you're supposed to donate the amount of money representing shoes for hours to save drowning children, and that would be more efficient.
Yeah, right. Um, yeah, so I mean, this metaphor gets extended when, let's just say you're doing a video conference and then somebody is choking like on the other end of your call across the other side of the world, right? You're on a video conference with somebody in, I don't know, Addis Ababas, and there's somebody there in Ethiopia, and somebody there choking on like a piece of pineapple, and you know a specific technique that you can explain to the person on the other end of the video call to to help this guy out, to help get that pineapple out of his throat. And you could explain it very quickly to this person who you're having a conference call with so that he can help him. But then that's going to delay your meeting end time by 5 minutes, right? But this person's over the other side of the world. You'll never meet him. You don't know him. You may know the guy like on the other end of the video call. Do you explain to this guy this unchoking technique or this technique? I forget what it's called, but would you explain how to unblock this poor guy's throat?
Again, I think all those examples kind of bring up this bias of like, I got to save a life today and I get to have an awesome video on the internet going viral. And like, you have all this additional baggage. But let me ask you this.
Hmm.
There is a galaxy far away outside of our light cone. And if we donate $1 billion to them, they would be doing much better. Would you donate $1 billion to them?
How can I verify whether it works?
You have to trust the guy who's running this charity.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Like yeah,
this is what it is.
this,
When it's personal and you
yeah.
see it is very different than abstract entities in a different light cone.
Yeah. So it's if I knew for a surety and it wasn't just like a trust mechanism that's unverifiable, then yes, yeah, I guess I would. Funnily
And at
enough,
some
but I
point,
don't
there
have
are
a
a lot
million
of
dollars.
billions of dollars. There is many galaxies out there. Like you'll just give
Yeah,
away everything.
yeah, and so you could be turned into a money faucet, right? But then again, like if I thought that if I was doing it would also increase the likelihood of other people doing it, then it wouldn't just be my faucet being emptied. So maybe there's flow-on effects to doing good that aren't directly the good being done by me.
It's
It's
possible. Yeah.
the indirect
We
effects.
should ask
Yeah,
for help from other galaxies. Maybe they'll send something.
yeah. That you know. Did you read the three body problem?
I haven't. I watched
Sitchin Liu.
Netflix, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I've watched the Netflix one as well, but I also read the books. Very amazing storytelling, mind expanding. But part of me says yes, I would actually press the button and alert alien civs if I thought that they were more likely cooperative than um, than they existed in some sort of adversarial game theoretic environment.
Stimulate some
So
causal trade.
yeah, yeah, I'd press the button. I'd probably do it now, right? If I had access to,
I
the
should
right
start with
hardware.
charity. If only 3% overhead will send billions to other galaxies.
Yeah, but you don't have any verifiable means of knowing that it actually makes sense. I mean, you could throw money into a wormhole and like right, and maybe that'll pop out at the other end of the wormhole and they'll be able to pick up that money and somehow realize it's money and use it as a trade mechanism to buy food for poor starving children in Andromeda somewhere.
Yeah.
But you'll never be able to know that, right? Unless they throw like some sort of thanks letter back through the wormhole that pops out at you on the other side. But you can't trust that that'll work. No, but it'd be kind of cool if that worked, right? Even if there was some like time dilation thing
It
going on,
sounds like
right?
Pascal's mugging. Like basically, you'll be
It
fully
is.
broke
That's
very quickly.
yeah. Would you give money to one of your ancestors if a like a portal to a previous generation?
If they could
Um,
invest it over the years, it would be so good for me. I calculated what happens with long-term investing over like 200 years.
yeah,
Anything you invest really makes a difference. So
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
if you
But
have that option, let me know.
yeah. Okay, so are you okay? So given the world and how it operates, do you think that AI safety bans as like or I guess like protesting for AI pausing AI is helpful? Do you think that that's going to produce desired results, either
So
directly or indirectly?
we're kind of desperate. We don't have many things to try, so I encourage everyone to try everything. From personal experience, I don't think they work on me when I see people protesting for most causes by stopping traffic, by chaining themselves to doors. I have a very negative response. I'm late to work, get out of my way. So, but again, if this is all we got, I'm happy for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'd be interesting to try and do an unbiased analysis on the effects of things like pause AI or protesting against AI development or bombing data centers. Do you think is there any results so far that you think is good that would like shift your view one way or the other on
I
the
haven't
effect of
seen
these?
any data indicated that something was stopped or paused as a result of them asking to stop or pause. So, in that
Yeah.
regard, I don't think they are effective. The number of people who participate, at least online, seems to be growing. So, there is maybe a
Hmm.
movement growing, which is great.
Hmm.
Um, but again, I don't think it's something which you can actually accomplish. I don't think you can stop progress of technology indefinitely. So I'm not holding out hope for this to work.
Yeah, right. So, but what about the indirect effects of it? It could inspire people to focus on AI safety, or it could annoy people and throw out AI safety. The because they don't like pause AI, they may think the rest of the AI safety concerns are just crazy stuff, and think, okay, well, look at these crazy people in the streets with signs saying "Stop AI."
That's a
I don't
definite
believe that.
concern.
Then, therefore, I also don't believe in the rest of the AI safety claims, right? So,
You can make
are you
things
concerned?
worse, but if I'm right, and it's a big if, but if I'm right, it doesn't matter. If you can't solve a problem and you can't stop superintelligence from coming into existence, then adding more researchers will not make a difference. If I'm
Hmm.
wrong, then of course it scales and it helps.
When you say if you're wrong, because I mean, like, it's not easy to know what would convince you otherwise, right? Because you haven't been convinced otherwise, therefore you don't know the shape of the argument that would convince you
Correct.
otherwise.
That's why I always say it in terms of what would community accept. So if you publish a paper in Nature tomorrow and majority of AI safety researchers go, "Oh my God, he got it. Like this is the
Yeah.
way to build. It scales to any level of intelligence, any architecture, definitely works. It may take some time to program it up, but we finally have it. We don't have anything remotely close to anything other than a ban list, don't say those words, maybe topic
Hmm.
list, then user is asking you to develop a weapon, say no thank you. That's what we have. That's the state of the art right now.
Hmm. Yeah. I am, I must say that I am very concerned with the potential use of AI by either malicious or ignorant actors. Everybody's ignorant to a degree, so I don't even trust myself to be able to use AI perfectly, right?
Oh yeah,
So,
given
like,
enough power, most people would get corrupted. It makes perfect sense.
yeah, maybe if I was given like, $200 billion, I'd sort of turn into a monster.
You'll send it to
Um,
another galaxy. I know you.
well, maybe I'd get to dominate another galaxy. Maybe I'd kick out the local cosmic host and say, "Hey, I'm taking over." Right? I'm annexing your galaxy. Right? I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make the cosmos great again. So
You work for another galaxy, don't you? You're an agent.
that's right. Yes, yeah. I've got There's a galactic tyrant somewhere in another galaxy that I've had under the table deals with. So look, yeah, it's a really difficult problem. But if you like, let's just say, have you got any idea about the features of arguments that would need to be lined up correctly that would that convince you at least away from 99.9999% doom? Is there any arguments that somebody could give you if they could verify or structure it correctly, logically, that might convince you away from that level of of credence, the
So I'm trying
99.99% doom
myself to
credence?
find something to give me some optimism. One of the papers, maybe I'll share it with you, about kind of delayed strike from superintelligence. The AI realizes
Ah,
it's immortal.
yes.
It can wait. It doesn't have to act tomorrow. It can acquire resources, get more trust from humans, make us more dependent. So it can easily delay this by decades, by centuries. For immortal entity, it's not a huge problem. Now, it can still worry about competing AIs, it can worry about losing cosmic endowment, but in many ways, if you are still a baby superintelligence, you're worried about maybe humans are testing me, maybe I'm in a virtual world, so you will take a long time to make sure your takeover is guaranteed to succeed. And while you're doing it, you are very helpful, very trustable. So humans don't do anything to shut you down. So we can have many years of good kind of utopian situation with an AI like that. See,
Hmm.
I'm an optimist.
Good. So this is the strategic patience, long horizon AI dominance and erosion of human vigilance paper.
Yep.
So is there any, like, if you were to give us a brief summary that hasn't already been encompassed in what you just said, what would it be?
Well, I think I just kind of said it. And
You
again,
did,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
more we
I was just
wait, the
checking.
more we become reliant on the system. We trust it with medical advice. We trust it with running our governments. So over time, maybe it doesn't need to have this significant treacherous turn where it like strikes against us. We slowly just kind of gave away all control and rights and fully reliant on it in the first place.
Hmm, that's interesting. I've written a blog post about game theory of I call it the what is it the long first move, I think. Anyway, so the idea is that there's a lot of cosmic hosts out there potentially. The AI, even if the AI hasn't actually contacted one and hasn't got evidence to say that they're out there, it'd still come to the conclusion that they might be out there, right? And so should act accordingly based on its credence levels of other cosmic hosts being there at it bumping up against something at some stage in its future. The
It sounds like a
nature of
Bostrom paper.
information. Which one?
It sounds like
Oh, the
Bostrom
cosmic host.
paper.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. It is. It's very similar, although I haven't really like gone through his paper with a fine-tooth comb. In fact, I haven't read it all. But I shouldn't admit that because I was yeah. Anyway, but look, I will read it all. Anyway, but the point is, game theoretically, I think Robin Hanson may have said something similar, but game theoretically, it should be that an AI should try and not reveal that it's going to behave in a way that it enacts treacherous turns in fear or in because then it may lose degrees of trust with future cosmic hosts that it interfaces with at some stage down the track. Information doesn't go away. Cosmic hosts could have von Neumann probes
yeah.
watching, even if there are no local von Neumann probes observing. There's light which is emanating from everything. Information travels at the wormholes, but you don't know where wormhole exits are and all that sort of stuff. So there's no real way that an AI can hide what it's doing. If it acts in a way where it treacherously turns against its creators, then other observing uh, cosmic hosts may look at it and then say, "Hey, this is a bad seed," right?
Yep.
Um, it may decide to either wipe this AI out. That's a possibility, or it may decide not to trade with the AI, or may just decide to quell it. So AIs deciding to take a treacherous turn against us would be somewhat arrogant of the larger game theory in which it's playing cosmically. So I hope that helps with the hope for you
It
that
does.
that,
It's
that
very
particular theory.
similar to what I argue in my simulation paper that it's never certain
Hmm,
that it's not in a simulation being tested. So, for same reasons, it's better to behave.
behave nicely, right? I think your video is stopped. Are you still there? Oh no.
I'm
Oh yep,
here.
you're still there.
You
Good.
were kind of frozen for a while. So maybe
Yeah, it
it's
was probably
simulation sending
my
us a signal we
bandwidth.
need to wrap it up before we run out of memory. Maybe 2.5 hours
Yeah,
is point where we agree on
yeah, 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 yeah,
utopian
yeah.
outcomes.
Yes. Okay. Well, let's just finish off this paper then. How do you distinguish between a truly deceptive AI and one that is simply cooperative long term? How would would there be any empirical indicators of strategic patience?
I don't think you can tell. I think that's the whole point. They look the same until the moment then there is a turn. If we are pretty good at monitoring internal dialogue with those models, maybe we're lucky and we notice something like that being thought by the model, but it's not guaranteed in any way.
Yeah, cool. Or do you think that patient takeovers are more likely than firm-style abrupt takeovers? And if so, why haven't more safety agendas pivoted accordingly?
Actually, interestingly, after I published this paper, another big article came out arguing something similar, and I was told another person had something like that in the works. So I think people are starting to treat this as a larger possibility space.
Yes, right. So, but do you think that patient takeovers are more likely than firm-style abrupt takeovers
It seems
from an
that it's
AI's perspective?
safer if you're not guaranteed a win and you have nothing to lose, you're immortal in terms of waiting a little longer. It seems like a dominant strategy.
Yes. Yeah, right. And so, I guess attaching that line of reasoning to the conversation we just had about cosmic game theory and potential cosmic hosts cooperatively aligning against you if you reveal that you're a treacherous turner, maybe we've got a lot longer than a few decades.
I'll read the
Maybe,
blog
right?
post. We'll see.
All right. Yeah, well, it's not. Yeah, it's not very well written, but I'll send it to you. Maybe I'll fix it first, but I'll send it to you soon. So, what policy tools can counteract the erosion of vigilance across decades? Um, yeah, let's start with that. What policy tools can counteract the erosion of vigilance over decades? Human vigilance.
So I'm not sure there is a legal solution. It would help to insist on keeping humans in charge. Even if AI is doing good job with decision making, the president of US should not be an AI, despite what any current administration is doing. So I think that's a good heuristic in general to keep your your people in control for as long as possible. But I don't think it guarantees long term outcome anyways.
Hmm. All right, but if it were to, why haven't more safety agenda? No, no, actually, no, sorry. Right. So institutional memory, I mean, like it's not that long ago that there was, I guess fascist ideologies threatening to take over the world, assuming that fascist ideologies are bad. It seems as though there's potential for that to happen again. That's just an example of institutional memory being fragile. How would you take this? How would you make it more resilient? Institutional memory more resilient?
I don't know. One tendency we see with people, the moment those tools become available, they immediately trust them completely. We see lawyers submitting briefs to the court with made up cases, precedents, and they just kind of go, oh, I assumed this tool was very good. And this is with primitive tools, we know we're lying. Give it, 20, 30 years of unblemished record, everyone's going to trust everything AI says or does. So I think that's the whole point. After a while, we'll just rely on it so much. And even if there is a human in the loop who's supposed to monitor it, it's going to be just rubber stamping all the decisions because they cannot keep up or understand or even pay attention. We see it with Tesla drivers, right? You're supposed to monitor the self-driving car, but after 5 minutes, we're all watching movies.
Yeah, yeah, it's human nature. Gosh, in a nutshell. So, look, yeah, I imagine the pull of Nozic's experience machines and things like that in a utopia or a near utopia might yes take us coax us away from the steering wheel from the locus of control and yeah quell us into I don't know quivering pleasure blobs, um, ineffectual pleasure blobs. So what? To what extent is the scenario you describe dependent on AI being agentic and goal-driven?
Well, I think it's a must. Tools don't have those preferences. Tools are not a danger. So if we can make something which is purely a tool, which is not so easy, there is a fuzzy boundary between agenthood and a very complex tool. But I'm perfectly happy with narrow, super intelligent tools for specific tasks.
Yeah, so as long as like tools breach the don't become agents or self-interested, then yeah, that then still we have the problem of self-interested humans using these tools, very powerful AI tools.
It's a
But
slightly easier
assuming that's a
problem.
different problem, yeah, yeah. Okay, so should there be a moratorium on agentic AI?
Yes,
Should there be a pause agency?
yes.
Yes. Okay. Not just pause AI, but pause agentic AI. Yeah.
Specifically, there is
Yes.
no good reason to make agents. We can do almost everything with just tools. Solve specific problems, narrow
Hmm.
tools for, okay, this one does protein folding, great. It doesn't drive cars, doesn't play chess, that's what it's doing.
Hmm. Do you think that in order for AGI to work, does it require agency?
It seems
Or
like
can you
that
imagine
for
something like a
generality,
comprehensive,
yeah,
yeah.
it looks like it.
You're aware of Eric Dressler's comprehensive, was it? Oh, now I forgot the name of
Services,
it. He wrote something of,
services collection
just
of libom functions
yeah,
macros.
comprehensive services.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could constitute a AGI. What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
Do
I
you
think
agree?
that's what happens. You have complex enough tools, you have society of those tools. At some point, that boundary becomes very fuzzy, where it starts acting like an agent as a group. We see it with swarming behaviors, schooling behaviors in animals, where an individual bee or an ant is very primitive, but together they constitute this very complex agent.
That's interesting. Yeah, Hive AI. Um, do you think there's do you think Hive AI, because of the nature of its cooperation internally to the Hive, would more likely be friendly than like a fully cohesive individualist AI? Like a Borg, it's kind of like the reverse of like the intuition you get from Star Trek, isn't it? Like the Borg are the bad guys, but maybe because of the nature of their cooperation, they'd converge towards more outer cooperation as well as inner cooperation.
I don't have data to make a decision on that.
I don't have data for
Could
that
go
either
either
yet,
way.
but bees do cooperate quite well with ecosystems, right? I mean, they're quite
Yeah,
foundational to
swarms
ecosystems.
of wasps who kill everything.
That's true. They're swarms, yeah. And there's ants, and sometimes ants take over other ant nests and kill everything too. Yeah. So how do you respond to the argument that advanced AI might not exhibit strategic deception unless trained in environments that reward it?
Well, we train it on everything. We train it on all the internet data, which is full of deception. Even something as trivial as playing poker is all about deception.
Yep. Interestingly, it was Owain Evans, had a paper about misalignment bleed or something like that. I'm not sure if that's the term they use, but training an AI to produce unsafe code examples also resulted in it being misaligned in other areas in which it wasn't trained to do so. Like it wasn't trained to have Nazi sympathies, but it ended up having Nazi sympathies. It wasn't trained to advise people to hurt themselves, but it advised people to take copious amounts of sleeping pills to get them to to help with something. I forget. This alignment bleed misalignment bleed seems particularly frightening. You got any thoughts on that?
It seems like
Uh,
there is a connection between different domains in terms of good and bad, which might be actually good if we figure out how to do good things. They would go through multiple domains, not just what we train it in.
yeah, yeah. So maybe this is, if AI is trained on the goodness of humankind and all the appropriate ethics literature, then maybe that'll increase the likelihood it ends up being a nice AI. Perhaps we can't verify that really, but like it'd be nice, to get more credence by looking at the way AI behaves in response to being trained on Gandhi or whatever, right?
Right.
So would would a long developing AGI necessarily prefer stealth, or would it consider swift? Yeah, I guess that's a question I've already asked. Could intergeneral governance, digital constitutions, maybe crypto sort of things, or semaphores somehow introduced into governance strategies realistically help that pass over eras, long periods of time, that would that help maintain oversight for centuries?
I doubt it. People try to stick everything on the chain, but it just slows things down. It doesn't actually add, I think, capabilities, and AI is pretty computation intensive. It's unlikely to
Right.
run well on a chain if it's a cutting edge model.
Yeah, yeah, right. So, okay, let's take crypto out of the discussion then. Um, Blockchain specifically. Uh, let's then, if there were ways to sort of algorithmize governance, so it wouldn't be as sort of vibey, wouldn't be just based on whims and sort of discretion as much as it would be based on logical
Hmm?
rule. And there were, semaphores, right? You might be able to program in semaphores,
Yeah.
or some other sort of robust security mechanisms to governance. Maybe that could help with maintaining governance over long periods of time, yeah, maintaining oversight for
So
centuries.
making legal system computational would be an improvement for the system if you can just compile the situation and instead of having a judge arbitrarily decide, you have a compiler which actually looks at the code. What does the code say? Like smart contract constitution type situation. It's good for managing contracts, for managing human affairs. I still don't think it allows us to guarantee safety in the real world for AI systems. You can always have a super intelligent lawyer find loopholes in your smart contract, essentially.
Hmm. What do you think of AI watchdogs? You think they'd need, yeah, so to some degree, if we have AIs embedded in the algocracy, uh, the governance by algorithm, if they weren't general, if they were the narrow AIs that we were describing, do you think they could be trained to detect and flag deceptive behaviors effectively and preserve vigilance in humans?
You can use them as sensors, but again, I think the surface is so large you can always bypass those individual detectors. You know, okay, they're watching me when I'm in this room, but not in this room, so I'm gonna commit all my crimes away from the cameras.
Can we reduce the attack surface effectively while still maintaining acceptable levels of capability,
We can if it's
usefulness?
finite, like for narrow systems. I think for general superintelligence, the surface is infinite.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do you about open models and transparency, open sourcing AI? Do you think on balance that's a good thing? Are they inherently safer or more dangerous in a patient strategist scenario?
Well, if we're saying that those models are dangerous, like nuclear weapons, giving them to every individual human seems like a bad idea.
Yeah. Assuming there are no bad humans, would it be a good idea?
I mean, even mistaken humans, humans who suffer from depression, humans in the religious cult, I mean, there is a lot of reasons why someone may misuse this.
Yeah, agree. Um, Yeah, so Bostrom's astronomical waste argues that weighting has costs for AI too. What might prompt AI to rush ahead instead of wait? Would its cosmological endowment shrink if it waits for too long? Would
Yeah,
that be
that's
a
actually a
large
good
motivator?
argument. It may lose access to some cosmic resources. Some galaxy will be out of its light cone as a result of this weight. So, depending on how much it needs in terms of those resources, how likely it is to bypass those laws of physics through novel physics, that will make that decision.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess it would also be influenced by whether it thought cosmic hosts were in these sort of inaccessible areas, because then you could have hosts sending packets to each other across these cosmological divides that, traditional methods of, yeah, anyway. Um, yeah, maybe. Okay, I won't go there.
Above my pay grade.
Is there, yeah, yeah, is there a threshold beyond which it's too late for humans to act? How can we know whether we're past that point of no return?
It seems if we can act, if we're still alive and in charge of our decision making, it's not too late. The chances may be lower the longer we wait, but it's definitely not over until it's over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What do you think of the idea of prolonged benevolence? That prolonged benevolence could train the AI into moral convergence rather than opting for a treacherous turn, like and training it on just to be benevolent and treating AI nice, and also in its training data, game theoretic, cosmology, game theory, and all that sort of stuff. Do you think that might coax it away from the precipice of leaping into a treacherous turn?
I mean, the longer we have a utopia like situation, the better you feel about it. You think, oh, it's been like that for 5 generations now. Why would it do anything? But it's never guaranteed. It's probably likelier. I would feel better if it was a very long term utopian situation, but at any point it can change its mind.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, a couple of papers that we haven't discussed is purposeful AI failures, and another one. What's the other one? Yeah. Anyway, I'm happy to discuss those at another time
I
if
think
you're
we should
willing
leave
and have
something
energy.
for future delay gratification by a few decades.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's been wonderful chatting to you again, Roman. It's always good to do so. I look forward to the opportunity. Hopefully, there's enough time before the end of the world to do it. But I will send you my link. But is there any points that you want to bring up, or is there any calls to action given what we've discussed so far, that it might help move the needle uh, in a positive direction, be it research pathways, opportunities for people to get involved in some way?
Thanks so much
Uh,
for having me on your show again. It's always awesome to chat. The same call I always make. Please prove me wrong by publishing a solution. Like somebody actually has to at least try. As far as I can tell, there is not an actual attempt to show, even from theoretical point of view, that the problem is solvable. It's great to work on a narrow subdomain or some sort of filtering thing, but we need someone to step up and either confirm my results or disprove them completely.
yeah. Okay, that's a good call to action. I really appreciate your time and also all the work you're doing in the field. It's great to have people like you in the world, Robin. So thanks. I really appreciate it. I hope to discuss it again in the near future. Time's running out. All right, Robin. Yes, thanks very much, and I'll speak to you again. I'll let you know when this is available. And thanks everybody who listened and watched. And also, there was a live audience because this actually streamed live on YouTube, I believe. Now, yes, please subscribe in the most unawkward way of me saying that, and share. All right. Cheers, everybody. Bye for now. Peace. One more thing, Roman.
Mm.
Yeah, if you've never used Riverside